I'm glad to have the opportunity to be here this wonderful Sunday morning. It's bright and early, and one of the earliest things that were under development was hydrogen, the first element of the periodic table, and so that's perfect right for our talk. First off, what is molecular hydrogen? Well, here's the molecule here. It's two hydrogen atoms that are bound together to form the molecule molecular hydrogen. It's the Hindenburg, it's the hydrogen gas. We have talked about hydrogen gas as an alternative energy source for many years, using fuel cells. It's 3 times more energy dense than gasoline. So that's where most of the research of hydrogen has been. However, recently, hydrogen gas has been shown to be therapeutic and medicinal.
I watched a bunch of videos that were saying all this stuff, and I just kind of wanted to see if it was true. Because my son had ADD, and there was a woman named Corinne Allen, I think was her name, and she was talking about how she has these clinics every year for like, I think 2 weeks, and it's for brain injuries and people who have brain dysfunctions or brain diseases or all kinds of stuff.
That was her kind of mechanism, how it's working, regardless, so hydrogen gas was protective in this area. Here, hydrogen-rich water protects against ischemic brain injury in rats by regulating calcium buffering proteins. So again, we have this whole brain injuries and things, which again is a huge issue these days. Hydrogen gas is very neuroprotective. This is awesome. Hydrogen-rich water ameliorates amyloid beta-induced neurotoxicities like Alzheimer's, for example. This is through the upregulation of SIRT1 FOXO3A by stimulation of AMP-activated protein kinase SNK and MC cells. So that's like awesome because, of course, the SIRT1 protein is like, it's okay, I understand. It's awesome now. Here, hydrogen-rich water improves neurological function through the attenuation of the blood-brain barrier disruption in spontaneously hypertensive-prone rats. So that may be one of the reasons why hydrogen gas is also effective. It can help attenuate the blood-brain barrier, and we know it's a big thing. When you have a disruption in that via hypertension or drugs or what have you, hydrogen gas may be able to ameliorate some of those things.
And so I bought it basically because my son had ADD, and I had arthritis, and I heard it could work on arthritis. And my wife at the time, Kia, had a lot of gut problems, microbials. She was taking a lot of that probiotics, and we drank a lot of bottled water. So for me, it was kind of like I didn't want to buy bottled water. I wanted to see if it worked on Kia's gut problems, my arthritis, and my son's ADD. And what I did was I told the doctor, my son's pediatrician, I said, I got an ionizer, and instead of giving him 20 milligram Vyvanse, can you give him a prescription for 10 milligram Vyvanse, and he'll just drink this reduced water, this calming water, electrolyte reduced water, and it'll enhance the absorption, because Vyvanse it lasts about 10 hours, I think. So he would come home from school feeling just weird. I mean, it was just kind of heartbreaking watching your son acting like he just is on speed and not eating and not growing. He actually lost weight because he had to go to the doctor every 3 months, and there was one time he actually lost a pound. He went from 50 to 49. So, but he had it bad. He actually I think needed the Vyvanse because he was a disruptive force in class, and it kind of quieted him down. He was causing problems for his teachers, and it was not good. So, but still, even you just don't like to see your son acting like that, acting like he's lost his sense of, just like another person, and not being hungry, not being able to eat, not gaining weight, not getting taller. His sister passed him up. So what I did, in a nutshell, I just said, look, can I just try this? Can you do 10 milligram Vyvanse instead of 20? And then it'll hit him harder, it'll get out of his system faster, it won't last 10 hours, it'll probably last 6 or 7 hours. But it'll still get the effect of a 20 milligram Vyvanse even though it's only 10, and therefore there's less wear and tear on the body because it's only taking half as much of the drug that he was before. And the doctor said, sure. So we did that, and it worked. The 10 milligram Vyvanse was pretty much when you drank the 9.5 common water, 9.5, it caused more rapid absorption, just the general diffusion was greater, so therefore he felt like he was on a 20 milligram Vyvanse even though he was only on a 10 milligram Vyvanse, and it wore off in about 7 hours, so it worked out great. And
hydrogen-rich water enhances the 5-FU, which is a chemotherapy drug, inhibition of colon cancer. This is very powerful. Chemotherapy, widely used. It's very toxic, of course, to cancer cells. Hopefully that's the goal, but also to our cells. And first off, a lot of studies are showing that hydrogen gas can actually protect the negative side effects of various chemotherapy drugs, like renal-induced neurotoxicity, some different things. So hydrogen gas can protect against the negative side effects of drugs like aspirin-induced gastric mucosal injury, chemotherapy. In this study, hydrogen gas actually offered an additive effect of the chemotherapy drug, where this is a colon cancer in rats, but hydrogen gas, when you gave the drug, there was this much effect, and when you gave hydrogen gas and the drug, there was an additive effect, and hydrogen gas alone could help a little bit.
Kind of cleans things up, does a lot of things, but it prevents the buildup of plaque, amyloid plaque, atherosclerosis, arteriosclerosis, all this.
Here, this is pretty powerful here. Consumption of hydrogen-rich water prevents atherosclerosis in polyoprotein E knockout mice. So when they have this genetic knockout, they're going to get atherosclerosis very easily. Hydrogen, this is part of the quote here. The authors in the article state when they compared these results to other things, the efficacy of hydrogen water seems to be greater than folic acid, vitamin E, iron, alpha-lipoic acid, and other things in the preventing of this atherosclerosis. So again, very powerful.
Plaque buildup diseases and inflammation. It basically cleared his head. It basically clears your head if you want to kind of make it a holistic thing. But he didn't feel as if, or he felt as if he was on Vyvanse even when he wasn't. So I decided just to make him drink a lot of common water and not take any Vyvanse at all, and that's what he did for the whole last 2 months of, or maybe 3 months of, at the time he was in 6th grade. And it worked. He didn't have to take the Vyvanse anymore. He could focus. He didn't disrupt his classmates. Didn't cause problems, and now he doesn't have to take Vyvanse anymore. He doesn't have to take even the 10 milligram. He just doesn't have ADD anymore.
Now, briefly, again, the safety, it's very well established. In at least all the cases, there's really no known toxicity that we have found so far. I mean, it has been, there's literally hundreds of studies already just on therapeutic applications, but the fact they've used it in deep sea diving since the 1940s to prevent decompression sickness, because normally you get like nitrogen narcosis and whatnot, hydrogen gas is able to prevent that from happening. And then, of course, from our intestinal bacteria, like I said, from the dawn of time, we've been producing hydrogen gas. We have these basal levels of hydrogen gas in our body all the time. So the safety profile of hydrogen gas is enormous, and so the first rule, right, do no harm, and then if something may work, let's try it. So I'm like, that's why I'm so passionate about hydrogen gas, is because in reality, I can't really think of something that's, I guess, more safe as a supplement that has therapeutic potential than hydrogen gas, and yet has such profound therapeutic potential. So here's a brief summary. Again, therapeutic potential in 150 or over about 170 different disease models and essentially every organ of the human body. Neutralizes the toxic radicals as a selective antioxidant. Upregulates production of the body's own antioxidants when it needs to be. Again, if you already have normal glutathione, it's not going to increase it more because that could be bad. It has possible signal modulating properties, which again is offering these anti-diabetic, anti-apoptotic, all these different things. In fact, there's one article published by Nature Publishing Group in the Journal of Obesity showing that hydrogen gas could activate the fibroblast growth hormone 21, which induces energy expenditure for like weight loss and things. They found that it was in a mice study, but they found, I think it was rats drinking a hydrogen-rich water had about the same effect as a 15% caloric restriction. And then there was an additive effect when you did both of them. So I mean, hydrogen seems to mimic fasting. Well, we already talked about ghrelin. That's, again, fasting, so it's pretty powerful there, too. Has a very high safety profile. Many easy methods of administration. Probably the easiest, of course, is just drinking hydrogen-rich water. Briefly, because I know the question is what's more effective, inhalation or hydrogen-rich water? Well, it depends. Sometimes inhalation can be more effective, but most of the time...
In America, it's kind of late on this because it kind of prevents diseases and makes people not have to take meds anymore, and it's kind of not the goal of the American Medical Association. I don't know if prevention is their true goal or if simply waiting for someone to get something and then treating it is the goal. Anyway, in Japan, prevention trumps everything because prevention always is the cure. The prevention is the cure. So if they can prevent diseases, they can cure diseases. So it's kind of like smallpox and mumps and measles and I guess rubella, like whooping cough. All these things that have been eradicated were eradicated because they were vaccinations were given to children, and now the diseases don't really exist anymore. They maybe in other countries, but to eradicate disease, you have to learn how to prevent them. You can't just treat. We don't know how to cure anything. We can't cure the common cold, so that's not going to happen. Curing diseases will never happen. Preventing diseases is right here. It's happening now. So, in the case of diabetes, the guy Nate Darnell is diabetic. He works with. He's actually doing this to people and saying, "Here, drink this," in an actual clinical setting, and he has read all the 600 research papers on this stuff. He knows all this stuff. And what happens is when diabetics drink the water, they have the LDL goes down 15%. The HDL goes up about.
Other question I had for you was, we provide personal training here at Live. Is hydrogen-rich electrolyzed water something recommended for athletes then? Does it have a benefit to them or to people who are just training heavily?
Well, based on all the research that I've read, I think it has a benefit to everybody, and I think moderation is the key. And before we talk about the athletic side, I'd like to talk about the diabetic side.
Okay.
And because that's my realm of expertise, and just looking at the different options we have for diabetes management. And first and foremost, it's important for everyone to understand that diabetes is a global epidemic, and we often call it the silent epidemic because it doesn't receive nearly as much airplay or focus as it really should. It costs our nation $250 billion a year just to address diabetes and its complications, and that number is growing. I mean, we're dealing with adolescents that 20 years ago, it was unheard of for adolescents to be diabetic. And now 25% of American adolescents are diabetic type 2s. And we're not really sure what's causing all of that. But with common sense, we can look at just the standard American diet and say, gosh, look at the amount of sugar that's in this. Look at the amount of trans fatty acids that they're consuming, and we're allowing it to happen. But diabetes is also a gateway disease, and it contributes to accelerated development of cardiovascular disease, osteoporosis, neurological issues, cancer, the list goes on. So really what a diabetic would encounter is what everybody else would encounter. They just do it a heck of a lot faster.
Yeah.
And they technically don't die from diabetes. They die from collateral damage to all of their peripheral organs through chronic oxidative stress. And this is what hydrogen really suppresses. And of course, with electrolyzed reduced water, hydrogen is the primary component that really suppresses this kind of oxidative fire in the human body. And it's not, I know a lot of physicians have concerns about antioxidants and people taking too many of them. And there's a concern about that too, because we do need oxidative processes happening inside the body for regular function. But it so happens that hydrogen, based on existing research, it's selective. It doesn't disrupt any of those vital oxidative processes that we have to have working. It's very selective. It only suppresses, I don't know how it knows this, but it only suppresses those that seem to be bad or have a negative influence on the body. And with the diabetic population, we know that if they're consuming between 1 and 2 liters per day, which is what we've done all the studies up to, and that's essentially 4 to 8 glasses, we know that it increases their insulin sensitivity. So that is a good thing because it reduces the amount of insulin that they need. That also reduces the cost of their insulin. Insulin is very costly. We know that, again, consuming 1 to 2 liters reduces their LDL cholesterol on average by 15%, and that's the bad cholesterol. It increases their HDL cholesterol, which is the good cholesterol, by 7 to 8%. HbA1c is a measure of their average blood glucose over the past 90 days. And we know that that stabilizes, and we're seeing average numbers of between 7 and 6 on HbA1c levels just by routine consumption of the water. Does that mean that it cures diabetes? No, not at all. But we have seen in cases of prediabetes, we can reverse prediabetes if they maintain a regimented diet and they're consuming electrolyzed reduced water on a routine basis. It can reverse that condition, which I think is really important because once you're diagnosed as being a diabetic in the United States, that stays on your medical record indefinitely.
About 7.5%. The good cholesterol goes up, the bad cholesterol goes down 15%. And they have a greater sensitivity to insulin, like the attenuation is greater. So in other words, like I said, what hydrogen gas does, and there's a bunch of different settings in your body, all these thermostats, you could say, that are not set, that need to be reset. And what hydrogen does is if there's something in excess, it'll decrease it, and if there's something lacking, it'll increase it. So it brings your body to homeostasis in all these different settings. LDL and HDL is only one example. Insulin sensitivity is another example, but there's I don't know, there's at least 100, I'm sure, probably thousands.
And the reason why is because under the right conditions, hydrogen can alter the levels of activities of over 200 different biomolecules. I got 200 biomolecules. I just went through a bunch of articles, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's a transcription factor, that's a protein, and this is not mRNA. Remember, because you do, RT-PCR or something, you have different, mRNA levels or whatnot. That doesn't actually account to like your Western blot of an actual protein. So these are all things that have been altered on the protein level, which is what matters. And hydrogen gas is able to upregulate or to downregulate over 200 of these different things.
But whatever there is, what it does is balance the strong with the weak. And in the case of the guy Tyler LeBaron, he was talking about how in Parkinson's, the reason why he went to Japan and studied with a guy named Kenji Ono.
And I came across this whole hydrogen gas area about 6 years ago or so, and I was really astounded. And I wanted to learn more about it, and I started doing more research, reading more articles, just going through everything that I possibly could. I was an undergrad. My degree was biochemistry. I continued reading all these articles. I got more and more excited about it. I did a number of just research projects here and there. And then for my internship to complete my degree in biochemistry, I had the opportunity to go to Nagoya University in Japan. And that was a big deal because Nagoya is the 5th most prestigious university there in Japan. It's very well recognized. And I had the opportunity to go over there and research with some of the brightest minds in the world of academia. And my mentor, Dr. Kinji Ono, he is the vice dean of Nagoya University in the Department of Neurogenetics. And it's very interesting how he got into this whole area of hydrogen gas. And his story is basically he heard a lot of anecdotes and other colleagues talking about this whole hydrogen gas idea and its possibility that it could be medicinal and therapeutic. And he being rather skeptical and a very respected scientist in his field of neurogenetics and all the things he's done at the Mayo Clinic and other places throughout his life, he didn't quite want to do the whole hydrogen gas thing because he was very skeptical and almost sounded a little like pseudoscience or something. And so what he decided to do is do an in-house study where he was going to see the effects of hydrogen gas on Parkinson's disease. So he took rats and injected them with a toxin to induce a Parkinson's disease in them. And then he had, in a controlled trial, he had some of the rats drink water that contains dissolved hydrogen gas, and of course the other rats just drink normal water. What he saw changed his research career because he saw that the rats drinking the hydrogen-rich water, it totally prevented the development of Parkinson's disease. So when he saw that with his own eyes in his own lab, that totally changed his research career, and now he is focused entirely on trying to elucidate what the underlying molecular mechanisms and primary targets of hydrogen gas is. And that's also my primary desire or goal or emphasis, is what interests me the most, is how is hydrogen gas working? Because we see it in cells, tissues, animals, humans, all these different things about hydrogen gas, but the question is, how is it actually working? And those answers remain elusive. So in this presentation, I'm just going to briefly give you an overview of hydrogen gas and its medical applications, what we've seen so far, how it can be used, and that should help you in your practice and how maybe you can use it. So here's some of my objectives here. We're basically the basic pharmacodynamics of hydrogen gas, including its role as an antioxidant and its signaling and modulating effects, therapeutic and potential of molecular hydrogen in medical and clinical applications, and the shortcomings and weaknesses of conventional antioxidants and how hydrogen gas can overcome them. So right now, molecular hydrogen has shown to have therapeutic potential in over 150 human and animal disease models. The last count is actually closer to 170 different human and animal disease models, and essentially every organ of the human body.
And what they found was that in the hydrogen gas, whether you breathed it or drank it or injected it in a saline solution, it had the same effect anyway. What it does is the H2 binds with the hydroxyl radical, which is an OH. And when the H2 bumps into it, one of the H's goes into the OH and it becomes H2O. So you immediately turn the most damaging, toxic, cytotoxic free radical in your body into water.
Great. Well, how is everybody doing today so far?
Great.
Great. Good. Great. Well, good. Like I told the other classes, I'm just like my dog. I have ADD, which is attention deficit disruptive disobedient disorder. So if you fall into the classification of ADD or ADHD, you're in good company. I don't care. Stand up, swirl around, do whatever to be respectful of your neighbors. Okay. I'm going to try to stay on track with following kind of a linear progression, but if any questions happen, we might divert all those things. So Kelly wanted me to talk today, or at least present information to you, because I sit on the board of directors at Diabetes Support Services, and part of that is functioning as a research analyst to review technologies that are used not only in Western healthcare, but from around the world, and to really separate the wheat from the chaff, so like separate the evidence-based research from all the marketing hype. And introduce you guys to some of the newer tools that we use for health management, especially within the diabetic population. Okay, is all that kind of like good in a nutshell?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
All right. So one of the breaking things that we're working with right now is hydrogen gas, and using that with our clinical diabetic population. And that has, in your medical training or nursing training, has anybody ever talked to you about this? No. Okay. All right, so I want to be very clear in that when I'm talking about hydrogen gas, I'm referring to H2, not H+. H+ is really acidic, don't drink that bad. Okay? H2 is two hydrogen atoms with extra electrons, so they can donate electrons. They're actually very, very, very unique in that hydrogen, also in hydrogen gas, also known as dihydrogen or diatomic hydrogen or molecular hydrogen, tomato, potato, whichever one you decide to pick, they're all the same thing. What's very unique about it is that it can pass through, it's small enough to pass through cellular membranes, including the blood-brain barrier. So it can immediately arrest things like hydroxyl radicals, which are the most cytotoxic free radicals of all in the human body. And H2 can immediately bind with that and suppress it. It immediately converts into water. Okay? So...
Wait, so what happens to the other hydrogen? I'm sorry. Is that getting too far off track?
Well, perhaps, but right now what we know is that the hydrogen gas immediately binds with the hydroxyl and then you just get water out of it. So, I mean, that's what the science says thus far. And there's no negative effect, or there's no cytotoxicity at all. And that was also, fortunately, based on 30 years of military research where they used it for super deep sea diving.
Let's look at this slide here. We have the big red thing there, that's the hydroxyl radical, and then we have the little blue dot, that's hydrogen gas. Notice where those big bang little blue, red things are. Those are inside of the cell, the nucleus, the mitochondria. Okay, that's where those are at. So that's where we have to get those antioxidants. Well, let's look at the blue diamond. Those are hydrophobic antioxidants. If they're hydrophobic, they're fat soluble. Therefore, it's going to be a little harder for them to get in the cytosol of the cell, where it's more of this aqueous, water soluble things. So the things like vitamin E, that's going to be where in the cell membrane. It's not going to want to go into, say, the nucleus or go all the way into the mitochondria. You see the problems? So therefore, it's not really going to get to where these hydroxyl radicals are being produced in complex 1 or 3 or in the TCA cycle of succinate dehydrogenase or things. The other problem is hydrophilic antioxidants. Okay, so how are you going to go through the cell membrane? Because remember, that's made out of fats. Well, now we have to have various transporters and all these different things. It changes the whole rate constants of getting the vitamins to the radicals where the problems are actually taking place. So now maybe we can see how we're causing reductive stress in some places and a continuation of oxidative stress in other compartments. Whereas hydrogen gas, smallest molecule. It's hydrophobic, it's neutral. So it can diffuse through all these subcellular compartments and membranes, the blood-brain barrier, testis barrier, placental barrier, all these things very easily, where it can actually react with these hydroxyl radicals and convert them to water, which is, the last thing, that's the byproduct is water. Think about it. When you have something like vitamin C, if vitamin C donates its electrons, it's not vitamin C anymore. It's an oxidized form, right? And so now the body has to rejuvenate that, which is going to use up NADPH equivalents or glutathione or other things. It's got to metabolize it. It's got to eliminate it. It's got to do something, or else now that could be a potential toxic pro-oxidant or of some byproduct or whatever. The body's got to clear it, right? Versus hydrogen gas, it's going to react to these hydroxyl radicals, and the byproduct is simply water.
So it's kind of a 180, you could say, from having all this damage done constantly to as long as you can keep drinking the water, because as soon as the hydrogen's out, it doesn't do it anymore. It's just, you're back to normal. So the hydrogen's good in your body for about 4 hours. So as long as you drink like a liter every 4 hours, or if you just want to drink like 1 cup every 1 hour, or even like a half a cup every 30 minutes, or even like 2 ounces every 15 minutes, something like that, the hydrogen will stay in you. You'll keep turning the most damaging free radicals into water. And that's only one of the things it did. And they didn't find that out till 2007, really. I think the Japanese knew it before that, but I think it was Baylor University that did the study in America. And this is what they found. They found a bunch of stuff, but the main thing they found was that it's reducing oxidation by converting free radicals into water. And doing this it's part of preventing diseases, But again, there's a whole lot of things it does. And if you watch the Tyler LeBaron video, he's saying that it's shown therapeutic effects in 170 diseases.
Drinking hydrogen-rich water is just as effective and sometimes more effective. In fact, in a Parkinson's disease study, only the hydrogen-rich water was effective, whereas a continuous administration of hydrogen inhalation was not effective.
Didn't go any further with it. They just didn't progress. As long as they drank the water, they would not get any more development of the Parkinson's. So, and that's just one of 170 diseases. It seems to do the same thing in all diseases. If you're in the early stages of the disease, like Nate Darnell was saying, if you're pre-diabetic and you drink it consistently, you got to drink it right before you go to bed and right when you wake up, because the period you're asleep, it's going to wear off. So you really want to drink it just before bed and immediately upon waking up, in order to, if you actually have diabetes or Parkinson's or something like that. Or if you just want to prevent diseases and you're serious about it.
Does anybody know what the cost of cancer is, like on average, in the United States?
Too much.
Really? So, I mean, for instance, if you're diagnosed with cancer, on average, the cost to an American citizen, if you're diagnosed, regardless of the kind, you'll be dead within 3 to 5 years, and the cost of your care will be $350,000 plus. Those are the stats. 1 in 3 of us will be diabetic by the year 2050 if we proceed with the direction that we're going. 1 in 2 of us will have cancer. And we'll certainly all have cardiovascular disease if we keep using the same system that we're using. Okay, so it's important for us, especially you guys coming into the field, it's important for me to share this information with you, not for the sake of beating down pharmaceutical companies, not for the sake of criticizing physicians, but to open your minds to other options. Because when you're out there wrestling in the field, you're only as good as the tools that you know about. And if you know about other options, that's going to make you a much better healthcare practitioner. Okay? So,
if a person was pre-diabetic, they would have the same effects, but they wouldn't ever develop diabetes. They would never get the diagnosis. They wouldn't have actual diabetes as long as they kept drinking. They would never get diabetes as long as they kept drinking it. And with Parkinson's, it's the same thing. If you catch somebody early enough in their development, it'll stop it, but then the symptoms kind of go away, and then the person will not have Parkinson's. They won't have the symptoms of Parkinson's, and that happens as long as they're early in the stages. I don't know if that's with cancer.
And here it is right here. Pilot study of H2 therapy in Parkinson's disease, a randomized double-blind placebo-controlled trial. This is a 48 trial they did, and awesome results. And of course, I've heard of, there's anecdotal case reports with people taking like the hydrogen-producing tablets. They'll put them in the water in people with Parkinson's disease. Often what I would say is it's not going to give a reversal of the Parkinson's, but maybe a better quality of life, maybe decrease the aging that's going to occur, or the downward spiral that generally occurs in Parkinson's disease. However, I've heard quite a few reports now, people who are taking the hydrogen, that they're have the symptoms. You can see they have the symptoms, and then after a few weeks or whatever of them taking the hydrogen, they totally don't even have that anymore, and they wouldn't be diagnosed as having the Parkinson's disease.
There was a hunch in 1967 that because cancer is highly associated with free radical damage, which causes DNA denaturing, that if there was a way to arrest the free radical damage, that we could effectively stall or significantly suppress the development of cancer. So that was a hypothesis in 1967. And then they did an animal study in 1975 using lab rats and intentionally infecting them with squamous cell carcinoma, which is skin cancer. And what they discovered was that when they were exposed to 97.5% hydrogen, I think like 2.5% oxygen in the atmosphere, within 2 weeks, all of those cancerous lesions had completely resolved. Okay, now what's interesting to note is that following that research, continuous research in the United States went black on that topic. No other research was done. Okay, I don't have the answer to that. In looking at all the research, there's no logical way to justify why that was done. There's certainly conspiracy theory, there's politics, there's business, all those play into it, no doubt. But there's no logical reason why it should have been stopped. From that point forward, all additional information or all additional research regarding that topic had to be done outside the United States.
Cancer, it can shorten the telomeres, it can slow tumor development.
In 1999, Japanese researchers started figuring out some of the mechanisms of action with regard to hydrogen-rich water on tumor cells. And the hydrogen, which is contained in electrolyzed reduced water, that's why it's called reduced, has an effect on telomeres on tumor DNA. Telomeres are little end caps which allow DNA to replicate, and as long as the telomeres are long, they can continue replicating. They don't know exactly why it does this, but they know that electrolyzed reduced water, which is rich in hydrogen gas, suppresses telomeres on tumor cells, thereby retarding the development of the tumor.
Only tumor cells, or?
It appears to be selective.
Okay.
Not in healthy cells, only in tumor cells. They don't understand why. That's just, it appears to be selective.
But if you're early in the development, it's either going to stop it or slow it down significantly, or in some cases completely reverse it, where you just no longer have the disease that you were about to get, that you were developing. So that's the kind of goal of it. This company, Enagic, is to make products that prevent diseases. And the Japanese Association for the Prevention of Geriatric Diseases, which is about 6,700 Japanese doctors who know quite a bit about preventing diseases, because they actually have had these things these ionizers in the hospital since the late 60s, early 70s. So they've been using it on humans in a real setting for about over 40 years. I think 67 was when the Japanese Ministry of Health recognized ionizers as medical devices and started putting them in their hospitals in like 69. And they didn't really know why these people were getting better, and mostly they used it for disinfecting, strong acidic water to clean the hospitals with. But they noticed like acid indigestion, dyspepsia, chronic diarrhea. It was curing these things. Something like maybe irritable bowel syndrome, stuff like that. And they started doing research as early as, real research, as early as 1975. So they've known about this stuff for a while. And so therefore the doctors that are in this association, these 6,700 doctors in this Japanese association.
Now also, it's important to recognize that radiation exposure causes hydroxyl radicals, which are the most cytotoxic free radicals in the human body. When a hydroxyl radical experiences or connects with hydrogen gas, what's the byproduct? Water. H2O. Okay? So technically speaking, in Japan right now, they're investigating the routine consumption of electrolyzed reduced water as a countermeasure against nuclear radiation exposure following the Fukushima nuclear power plant disaster. Because it's cost effective. Perhaps one of the reasons why it's not more utilized in the United States is that it's a natural substance and it's not patentable. And therefore it cannot be highly controlled. It cannot be, the creation of it can't be artificially suppressed, and therefore the price cannot be artificially inflated. It's curious to note that chemotherapy drugs in the United States often carry a 1,000% markup compared to their sale in foreign countries. Why is that? Well, when you talk to the pharmaceutical companies, they scratch their heads and they can't figure it out. That's not technically true, they just don't want to tell you what the reason is. When they're called to Capitol Hill, also, they scratch their heads and claim they can't figure it out. But they're patentable and controllable, right? And if they need to increase their profit margins, they simply restrict supply.
Association for the Prevention of Geriatric Diseases. they're experts. They're all experts. They know about electrolyzed reduced water. They know how to prevent disease. They know what type of supplements humans should take in order to prevent disease. I mean, in the final analysis, disease is all diet. It's partially genetic, but 99%, maybe 98%, something like that. It's from diet and lifestyle. And so if you can figure out the diets that cause things and figure out the diets that don't cause things, or figure out the diets that counteract the diets that cause things, then you can prevent diseases. So this association, they've all done research, they've all read a lot of research, they all know what's up better than any other association of any doctors in the world. And what is up is they say that hydrogen-rich water from ionizers prevents geriatric diseases. And in April 2002, they endorsed, all of them, unanimously, 6,700 doctors endorsed one brand of ionizer. They endorsed an ionizer based on this ionizer, the SD501 at the time. This had just come out, and so they said that's the one that can do it. That's the one that can prevent geriatric diseases. So we're going to endorse that, and they endorsed that brand, the Enagic brand, and no other brand since.
If our potential case study undergoes radiotherapy for ovarian cancer, was it ovarian or uterine?
It's ovarian.
It's ovarian. Okay. Fortunately, we did have a Japanese physician here in the United States working at the University of Pittsburgh, who's also a surgeon, and he's been very progressive with regard to research being done stateside. Again, note, he's Japanese, okay? And this was one of the more recent research articles regarding the use of hydrogen-enriched water to suppress damage caused by radiotherapy. So in essence, what the article says is that if the patient is routinely consuming water enriched with hydrogen gas, then it will help to protect all of the other organs against any collateral damage caused by the radiotherapy. Okay, which is often the case because once they're being treated, there are other organs that are affected by the radiation. Okay, same thing for cisplatin-induced nephrotoxicity. Cisplatin, very powerful chemotherapy drug. Okay, oftentimes it causes kidney failure, kidney damage. Hydrogen gas significantly suppresses the damage. Okay. As you'll note, all this research, almost all of it is done in Japan.
So in Japan, it's kind of common knowledge that the best ionizers made in Japan are Enagic ionizers. They also endorsed Enagic's Ukon Sigma, which is, Ukon is a Japanese word for turmeric. So this has, I'll let you look at what it has. That's what it has. It's the formula for preventing geriatric diseases. And Japanese Association for Prevention of Geriatric Diseases endorsed that type of turmeric. So what you have is a company that's basically out to prevent diseases, and they have the backing. And it's not like they just, in Japan everything is connected, so it's like a communist country, I think. So if something says made in Japan, that means that the government has said, okay, you can say made in Japan. They've regulated that company, because to say made in Japan, it has to be top quality. It's different than made in China, you know. And so they control these things. And so what you have is these ionizers in this formula for this disease-preventing supplement that was formulated by doctors in this association. So they all know what's the best formula. They all already know all this stuff. And if you look at the formula of this Ukan Sigma, this turmeric, what you have is the proportions, the ratio of the ingredients that are perfect for disease prevention. And the people that came up with it, like the people like Hironari Oshiro, the founder and CEO of Enagic, could not have possibly known how to make that. But he knows people who know how to make that. And those people are the doctors in the association who've been studying all this stuff, because their whole thing is like, we want to live the longest, we want to prevent diseases, we want to have the world's record for the longest longevity. You know, they have the lowest obesity rates, lowest disease rates, lowest crime rates, lowest infant mortality rates. It's almost like the exact opposite of, in terms of certain things, you know, incarceration. So what you have is the formula for disease prevention. You have the hydrogen-rich water, which upregulates and downregulates all these different settings and puts you in a state of homeostasis. And then you have this turmeric, which I'm not going to go into what turmeric does. Maybe I'll do a PowerPoint on that. But it basically is an antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, anti-plaque buildup. And they mix the exact percentages of, you know, vitamin C, vitamin B1, B2, B12, vitamin E. They have two types of turmeric, spring and autumn. They put the autumn in the powder, which everyone has, and then they turn the wild turmeric or the spring turmeric into an oil, which has minerals and trace elements which help with the absorption. So anyone that says that you take pepper with turmeric, what they're taking is the autumn turmeric, curcuma longa, which is the type of turmeric that all turmeric companies have because it's the cheapest and it has the most curcumin in the roots, so it's the most effective. It has the highest concentration of the active ingredient that causes the health benefits, which is curcumin. And the spring turmeric has a lower density of the curcumin, but it has a higher mineral and trace element profile than the curcuma longa. So what happens is you combine the two, the oil from the spring turmeric and the powder of the autumn turmeric, and it provides a more like a whole spectrum of health benefits without having to take black pepper, because in essence the oils, turmeric powder is oil soluble. So you need a bioperine in order to help the, you know, subcellular transcription factors and all that. So by combining the oil from the spring turmeric, it enhances the absorption. It also has olive oil, Korea oil, flaxseed oil, and evening primrose oil, because, like I said, it's an oil soluble root. The powder is not it's not dissolvable by water. You have to have oil in order to dissolve it, or some type of oil-like, you know, substance to help with the absorption otherwise it's not going to do its thing. It's going to be like a 10% absorption rate or something like that, maybe 30% or something. So they came up with a formula for maximum absorption, and that's it. I mean, if you want to prevent diseases, you can do it. The technology is here right now, and it's if you think about it, if it's real, if this is actually preventing me from getting diseases in my children, then we'll just never get diseases. You know? And if everybody were to drink this water and take this Fucon, then everybody wouldn't get any diseases. They just prevent them before they got them, so they'd never get them. That's kind of like the mission, you know, to get everybody on a disease prevention regimen where they're just drinking hydrogen-rich water every waking hour, not necessarily like, I mean, the way the Japanese do it, like in the colon cancer clinic, Hiromi, the guy who invented the colonoscopy and polypectomy snare, I think his name is Hiromi Shinya, and he has a colon cancer clinic in Japan, and he has ionizers in his clinic, and he recommends that the people buy an ionizer, but if they don't, they can just come back and get the water, and he recommends they drink 1 liter 3 times a day, 1 hour before each meal. So you don't want to drink too much of this with your food. You want to drink it mostly on an empty stomach about an hour before your meal, or like at least 30 minutes before your meal. And you just, a liter is a bit much, but 3 times a day you kind of need that much. I personally drink about, I probably make it and drink it about 4 to 6 times a day, usually 2 cups at a time, so 8 to 12 cups. And I think I've lost about, I mean, it has all these effects, but one of the interesting effects is that it produces like a 15% caloric reduction. In other words, you could eat the same amount of calories and you'll metabolize 15% more. So you could eat the same amount of calories and it'll be like on a 15% diet, basically, is what that comes out to. But so it also stopped the my ex-wife Kia didn't have to buy any more probiotics. That cured her whole gut problems, and my arthritis did not go away. I had arthritis in my ankles, and when I drank the water, I heard that it could cure arthritis, but it really didn't cure arthritis for me. It didn't. It didn't stop it. It might, I guess it stopped the progress, but it didn't reverse the progress, because I had, I guess you could say, like flashes of excruciating pain throughout the day in both of my ankles, probably like 5 or 6 times a day in each ankle, where the pain was really pretty intense. I mean, the first couple times it happened, I actually sweated and had to stop what I was doing. But then I kind of got used to it. I had it for about 2 or 3 years before I bought this thing. And the 2 or 3 years, I had jobs where I was on my feet all day. I was working like 70 hours a week. And I'd be in the middle of working and there'd just be pain. It was unbelievable pain. So that had gone on for about 2 years. And it went from happening like once a week to happening like once an hour. And it was just getting worse. And so these are the reasons why I bought this thing. And after about a month, I had kind of gone through the whole detox thing and kind of felt lighter and everything like that. But I still had the ankle pain. I guess not as bad, but it definitely didn't cure it. I mean, not even close. Maybe from having it like 6 or 7 times a day to maybe having it 5 or 6 times a day like that. So I don't know if it was true arthritis or what. Don't consider myself really old enough to be getting arthritis. So. But maybe whatever it was, I waited about, I think in January I got the turmeric, the Ukon Sigma, and I had gotten this thing in August, so 5 months later I got the turmeric and started taking, like, you're supposed to take 5 a day. And within a week I started noticing I started not noticing the pain, like subconsciously, like just not thinking about it. And then after a month I realized that I hadn't really even thought about it in like a week. So between the 3rd and 4th week, something happened between the water and the turmeric where I just didn't have pain in my ankles anymore for the whole week, like not once. And and so I kept taking it, and after like 2 months I hadn't had any pain, and so I stopped taking turmeric for a week just to see what would happen. And sure enough, within about 2 or 3 days, the sharp pain was hitting both the ankles like once or twice a day. And on the 4th day, it was hitting like 3 or 4 times a day. And on the 5th day, I started taking it again. And on the 6th and 7th day, it was gone again. So I'm not saying this is a cure for arthritis, but for me, my ankles were killing me, and now I have no pain. So whatever that is, I don't know. It worked. And I weighed 180 when I bought the machine, and now I'm 150. I lost 30 pounds. Not changing anything, just kind of like drinking a lot of water. I guess maybe I substitute. I think I eat less food because I drink more water, and it's kind of like a substitute thing. And because I take those 5 times a day, I'm more conscious of what I'm eating and drinking. Because I didn't used to drink water or take a supplement 5 times a day. And when you're doing that, you're just more conscious of, everything you put in your body. So I probably only eat really 2 or 3 meals a day. Whereas before I probably ate 3 or 4 and drank maybe 1 bottle of water a day, and now I probably drink the equivalent of like maybe 4 or 5 bottles of water. Whatever 10 cups is, I probably drink 10 cups a day. Whereas before I probably drank 10 cups of Coke or Pepsi and 1 cup of water a day. And it just cleans your, all the stuff I was eating and drinking is sodas and pizza and, Italian subs and all this potato chips and chicken wings and French fries. All this stuff was just toxifying my body. And so the first month I was drinking this water, it was like unbelievable what was happening. Like just stuff coming out of my ears and eyes and nose and pores and mouth and every place. And it just completely just de-acidified me, I guess you could say, or detoxified me, and I just felt like a whole new, I just felt lighter. Like I just didn't feel the same. I felt a lot better, a lot more. I felt like I had more energy. Like I used to sleep. I had 2 jobs where I would basically I would work 10 to 4 at night, Sunday night, and then 10 to 4 Monday morning. Monday through Friday I'd work 10 to 4 in days, And Sunday through Thursday I would 10 to 4 at night, so I'd get off work at 4 a.m. and fall asleep about 4:30 or 5, and then wake up at like 8 o'clock to get my kids ready for school. So I'd sleep like between 4:30 or 5 and 8, which is 3 to 3.5 hours. And I had been doing that for a while, and I was dying, because I don't know if you've ever tried to sleep 3 hours a night for like 8 years in a row, but it kind of wears on you. And after a month of drinking the water, I could live on the 3.5 hours of sleep and not have to take a nap like every day. Or I didn't take it every day. I felt like I needed to take a nap every day, and I did probably three to 4 times a week. But once I started drinking the water, I felt like I didn't need to take a nap. The 3.5 hours I was getting was plenty, and I just wasn't tired anymore, which I thought was kind of amazing, because I was really, really, really tired before I started drinking consistently, 10 cups a day. I think it's like because the hydrogen gas is donating it's giving you energy, as opposed to an oxidant, which is stealing energy. It's called donating and stealing. Yeah, those are the actual words in science. So free radicals are stealing, but the hydrogen gas is donating and is turning them into water. And
it will constantly elevate your cost of insurance. So it's really important that we keep our biomarkers in check and never receive that diagnosis, because it's going to be significantly more costly down the road. Now, with regard to athletics, we're seeing something very similar in that we also know that the hydrogen-rich water, because it functions as a very powerful antioxidant and has some degree of acid-alkaline suppression kind of capabilities in the athletic population, we're seeing that it actually reduces lactic acid accumulation. So that allows the muscles to run longer and stronger. Right. So instead of loading up on all kinds of protein and everything else, and again, there's only a limited amount of protein that right. we can process per day, and there are lots of bodybuilders and athletes that are consuming way more than they actually need, or their bodies can even handle, which can also be very dangerous to the kidneys. But with regard to water, we also know the athletes, they might be a little bit different because they are sweating and a lot of the water is evaporating out of their system. They might be able to consume a little bit more. But still, we need to fall within that kind of National Academy's range, which is between 2.7 liters and 3.4 liters, unless they're just really sweating out. But in that case, they do need electrolytes and stuff too.
Okay. So I have a question. I went on a motorcycle trip this last weekend, and I brought as much electrolyzed water with me as I could. How long will the hydrogen gas stay in the water? Can you pack water for 2 weeks to go on a long camping type trip, or is it something that you have to keep like just over the course of a few days?
Yeah, that's a really good question too, and it's actually not very long lived. So this is why we have to have machinery to make it on a regular basis. And we know that hydrogen, it can be slightly stabilized in water for several hours. So after production, it will remain dissolved in solution for about 4 hours. And then after that, it begins off-gassing, or it begins evaporating. And we know from the laboratory studies that after about 24 hours, it's about half of what it is at saturation. And then after 48 hours, the water is back to equilibrium, which is basically a scientific term for saying all the gas is gone and it's lost a lot of its therapeutic value. Now, the water will remain slightly alkaline simply because it has charged particles of potassium, magnesium, and sodium. And that has a little bit of a health benefit to it. And so even if you boil it, those don't go away. The water will continue to remain alkaline. But if you boil the water, or if you heat the water up, the hydrogen is going to dissipate even faster. So it's really important to have fresh water on a routine basis.
Okay.
Now there are different ways of producing, hydrogen-rich water. And if you are on the road, there are hydrogen sticks that you can use, which use magnesium hydride to produce that. You can do the same thing with silica hydride or even calcium coral hydride. The drawback to these, though, is that you can't produce a wide variety of waters. And this is why at the university level, we actually use the electrolysis process. because we can buy one machine and we can produce all kinds of cleaning and disinfecting waters along with cooking waters and everything else. So it's actually a much better cost-benefit ratio to do it electrically than it is through hydrolysis.
Okay.
But there are other options. So if you're on the road, that might be one. But what I'd actually recommend, I'm not sure if you have any travel cases on your bike, but when we do our clinical studies, we try to find insulated flasks like the steel flasks, and we'll pre-chill them. And you can make ice cubes out of the electrolyzed water and contain the hydrogen in the ice as long as you put it right in the freezer very quickly. And then you can just drop some of those after you pre-chill your container, drop those in there, and then fill it up with water, and then you're good, for your bike ride, so long as you're not going to be on the bike for more than a day or so.
Okay.
And it works very well.
So that makes me think of another question. When I ran out of the electrolyzed water, I had to pick up I got a Aquafina from the gas station, and the first drink I took of it, it made me feel thirsty. It felt like it washed away all the moisture out of my mouth and my throat. What is it that makes this hydrogen-rich water seem so much like smoother and just more hydrated?
Yeah, well, and that's a really good term, because that's the same term that I keep hearing from people as they begin consuming the water. And I have to tell you, I have the same experience. I can't, having consumed the water for over 2 years, I can't go out and easily drink bottled water anymore. It tastes terrible to me. I can't drink tap water. I can taste the chlorine right away.
Yeah.
But there's an aspect of the water which is sometimes called microclustering. And this was a term that was used when they were doing magnetic resonance imaging in a research project maybe about 13 years ago. And I'm not really a fan of this term because it sounds a little spacey to me. In the laboratory environment, we might be able to get away with using it. I use the term reduced surface tension.
Okay.
And if you remember, you grew up in Oregon just like I did, and you remember the water skippers on the water.
Yeah.
They would slide across, and they're able to walk on water because there's this boundary at the top of the water which is like elastic, and nothing can penetrate it. So they can walk on it. What happens when the water is electrolyzed is that surface tension decreases. So the water can now penetrate membranes a lot easier than typical water can. And that doesn't last forever, but that's what happens when the water comes off of the cathodic electrode in the electrolytic water generator, otherwise known as a water generator. It does have reduced surface tension, and when you consume it, and this water also has hydrogen gas in it, when you consume it, it moves through your cellular membranes. It goes right through your intestinal lining much faster than standard water does. So translated, that means you're going to be super hydrated. It makes it right into your joints. And oftentimes, we're getting to that age where we're starting to not recover as fast as we used to. We might have a little bit of joint pain in the morning. We know that those who are 60 years of age and older generally battle this on a routine basis. And part of that has to do with they don't have the kind of synovial fluid in their joints that they used to. This water will make its way through the muscle tissue, through the joint tissue, and add an extra layer of hydration in those joints. So oftentimes they feel a lot better, and they don't need to take things like aspirin or painkillers like they used to.
Will actually quench our thirst better. And so that has two benefits. One, maybe we don't want to feel thirsty because it's annoying. We're always feeling thirsty, and we have to go to the bathroom all the time. We're like, But on the other hand, most people are chronically dehydrated. They're not drinking enough water. And so drinking alkaline water makes them feel more thirsty. And so they're going to go and actually drink more water, and they get those benefits that way.
Okay. So another question, you refer to, the people who may have, even in our audience today, have those ionizer machines that produce the alkaline water with the dissolved hydrogen gas in it. That they are experiencing certain results, and then when the machine needs to get cleaned, these results disappear. Can you maybe give some anecdotal examples of these, what that is that people experience while drinking the hydrogen gas? I mean, you talk to people all the time.
Yeah. Well, some of them are quite impressive and hard to believe, but I hear some things so often and so frequently all over the world, because I travel globally to speak at a number of these conferences and things. But some of the most dramatic things that I have heard are in terms of anything to do with like pain relief and inflammation. People who have, say rheumatoid arthritis. And actually, I like to use the example of rheumatoid arthritis because there is a double-blind placebo-controlled clinical trial where there was actually a crossover design as well. Very good study that showed that hydrogen was very effective in helping with rheumatoid arthritis. And in fact, some of the patients who had early stage rheumatoid arthritis the hydrogen water helped them so much that they did not even register for as having disease markers high enough to be considered to have the disease anymore. In other words, they were cured, if you will, by drinking hydrogen water.
I should probably shut up now. Anyways, in a nutshell, you just don't need to sleep as much. If you're having insomnia, there's been a lot of reports of people with insomnia being able to get a good night's sleep. 170 diseases, therapeutic effects. It's medicinal, antioxidant, therapeutic hydrogen-rich water, which is going to slow, stop, or prevent diseases from progressing. And that's kind of unheard of. I mean, it may sound far-fetched, but it's all scientifically backed. It's all been proven. And the 170 diseases are really the tip of the iceberg because they didn't start studying it till 2007. And who knows how many diseases that number's going to be. I mean, 170 is great, but the more research they do, the more tests they perform, experiments and all that, the more diseases are going to figure out that it slows, stops, or prevents the progress of. And so, in closing, I'd like to say one thing. Let's change the world. Let's all prevent diseases for ourselves, our family, our community, our country, and the whole rest of the world. Okay, so it's been 45 minutes. I'll let you know how that turns out.